Hello everyone, my name is Priya and I welcome you all back to my channel. I hope you all are doing great. In the last video, we discussed Article 45, that is about education of children. And along with that, we also discussed evolution of education in India. If you haven't seen that video yet, then the link is given in the description box. In today's video, we are going to talk about this Right to Education Act of 2009, which is very important from the exams perspective. Before we start the discussion, let's take a short overview of the previous video so that we can get to know a little history about education of children before bringing this act, that is Right to Education Act, into existence. It starts with Article 45, which was added when the Constitution was being written, and it got implemented with the commencement of the Constitution, that is in the year 1950. As we have discussed, Article 45 was added under Part 4 of the Indian Constitution as a DPSP, which is non-enforceable or non-justiciable in the court. At that time, Article 45 used to talk about provision for free and compulsory education for children between 0 to 14 years of age. After the commencement of the Constitution, governments worked in their own ways to improve education system in India. But the development was not being met to the extent it was supposed to. So after many years, it was decided to make right to education as a fundamental right. And then in the year 2002 comes 86th Constitutional Amendment Act. By that amendment, three major changes were done to the Indian Constitution. Number 1, Article 21A was inserted in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution as a new fundamental right for education. The provision of Article 21A was exactly the same as Article 45, with only one difference, which is the age group of children. Article 45 talked about providing free and compulsory education to children between 0 to 14 years of age, while in Article 21A, the age group was reduced to 6 to 14 years of age. The second change was made in Article 45. Since the provision of Article 45 was shifted to Article 21A, so the previous provision of Article 45 was changed to this, that is, provision for early childhood care and education to children between 0 to 6 years of age. And the third change was made in Article 51A. A new clause, that is Clause K, was added to this article, according to which it is duty of the parents to provide education to their children between 6 to 14 years of age. Now this article, that is Article 21A, which was inserted as a fundamental right by 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002, to give effect to the provision of this article, in the year 2009, Parliament passed Right to Education Act. So this was an overall history in the field of education till the arrival of Right to Education Act. It was important to understand the history so that you would know how and why Right to Education Act brought into the scene. Now let's talk about Right to Education Act of 2009 in detail. The first thing we need to know is the important dates related to this act. On 12th December 2002, by passing 86th Constitutional Amendment Act, its first foundation was laid in the form of Article 21A. On 20th July 2009, Rajya Sabha passed the Bill of Right to Education. On 4th August 2009, Lok Sabha also passed the bill. On 26th August 2009, President Pratibha Patil gave her assent to the bill. And the next day, that is on 27th August 2009, Right to Education Act was notified publicly to the people of India. Now this is the date on which Right to Education Act was brought to the public. But this act was legally enforced from 1st April 2010. So if you are asked in which year Right to Education Act was passed, then your answer would be 2009. But if you are asked that on what date Right to Education Act was legally enforced, then your answer would be 1st April 2010. So these were some important dates related to Right to Education Act. Now let's understand what things have been described in Right to Education Act of 2009. First of all, the official name, or you can say the title of this act is Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. This act says every child between the age of 6 to 14 years, irrespective of his or her caste, religion, gender, wealth, place of birth, etc., can have access to free and compulsory education. This act contains 7 chapters and 38 sections. We will discuss important points mentioned in each chapter. So chapter 1 is about preliminary. This chapter contains 2 sections. Section 1 talks about short title, extent and commencement. Short title we have already discussed, that is Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. It shall be extended to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. This act shall come into force on such date as the central government may by notification appoint. This means this act will officially come into force from the date central government brings notification. This Right to Education Act is subordinate to the provision of Article 29 and 30. And why is it said so? Because Article 29 and 30 talks about cultural and educational rights. Okay? Next, this act does not apply to educational institutions which provides religious instructions like madrasas, Vedic pathshalas, etc. According to this act, elementary education means education from class 1 to 8. Now section 2 is about definition. The first point mentioned in section 2 is the appropriate government, that is who will take decision in relation to schools or educational institutions. So the appropriate government will be central government, state government and union territories. Union territory without legislation, their decision will be taken by the central government. And union territory with legislation, decision will be taken by the government of that union territory. Second point is about capitation fee. That is, school will notify about any kind of donation or contribution or payment other than the fee. Number 3, there will not be any kind of gender discrimination. Child, either boy or girl of the age of 6 to 14 years of age will be given free and compulsory education. Child with disability belonging to disadvantaged group, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, socially and educationally backward class, or group having disadvantage owing to social, cultural, economical, geographical, linguistic, gender will have advantage of Right to Education Act. Child belonging to such parent whose annual income is lower than minimum limit will also get the benefit. See, these are not all but important points of chapter 1. Now chapter 2 is about right to free and compulsory education. This chapter contains 3 sections. Section 3 is right of child to free and compulsory education, which we have already discussed in the beginning of this act. That is, every child between the age of 6 to 14 years, irrespective of his or her caste, religion, gender, wealth, place of birth, etc., can have access to free and compulsory education. No child will be responsible to pay any kind of fee which may prevent him or her from completing elementary education. Any child with disability will also have the right to access to free and compulsory education as per the provision of Person of Disability Act of 1995. And any child with multiple disabilities or severe disability may also have the right to home-based education. Now section 4 is about special provision for children not admitted to or who have not completed elementary education. This section protects the children who even after 6 years of age were not admitted to schools or could not complete their elementary education. So such children are to be admitted in class appropriate to his or her age, and special classes are to be given to children to help them understand their left studies. For example, if a child is 6 years old, then put him in class 1. If he is 7 years old, then put him in class 2, and so on. Also, for such child who joined late shall have the right to free and compulsory education even after the age of 14 years. Now section 5 is about right of transfer to other school. So according to this, if a school is unable to complete the elementary education or a child is required to move from one school to another for any reason whatsoever, a child shall have the right to transfer his school to any other school other than the schools belonging to a specified category or schools not receiving any kind of aid or help from the government. Moving to chapter 3 of Right to Education Act, which is about duties of appropriate government, local authority and parent. This chapter contains 6 sections. Section 6 to Section 11. Section 6 put duty on the government and the local authorities to establish school within such area where school is not established or in neighborhood within a period of 3 years from the commencement of this act. Section 7 tells it's duty of both state and central government to provide free and compulsory education and sanctioning funds for the proper functioning of this act. The central government shall develop a framework for national curriculum, develop standards for teacher training, and provide technical support and resources to state government for promotion and planning. Section 8 is about duties of appropriate government. It says, the appropriate government shall provide free and compulsory education to every child of the age of 6 to 14 years. ensure compulsory admission, attendance and completion of elementary education, ensure availability of schools in neighborhood, ensure that the children from economically weaker sections and disadvantaged groups are not facing any discrimination, provide infrastructure, teacher training and good quality of elementary education. Now section 9 is about duties of local authorities, which is almost same as section 8. Now section 10 is about duty of parents and guardian. It says it shall be duty of every parent or guardian to admit his or her child to an elementary in the neighborhood school for education. And section 11 is about appropriate government to provide for preschool education. It says there shall be proper arrangement by the appropriate government for preparing children below the age of 6 years and above the age of 3 years for elementary education, and that will be for free. So this was the last section of chapter 3. Now we are left with chapter 4 to chapter 7 of Right to Education Act, which we will cover in the next video. I know we are going deep into detail, but it is necessary to understand the plot of Right to Education Act. And for some of the exams, this topic is very important. So for today, that's all from my side. We will continue this topic in the next video. Till then, thank you so much for watching this video.